All right, we're here with Bill Coletti, and hey, gang, you're going to love this talk. You're going to love this conversation because Bill works at this super uber level with people, but also with entrepreneurs on crisis communication and reputation management. You know, Bill, I've heard the reputation management piece, but I love the way you point out it has a lot to do with crisis communication. So can you tell our audience what you do and, just take it from there.
Yeah, cool. Happy to do it. So we do, as you said, crisis communications and reputation management. I mean, primarily our clients are large enterprises, corporate level companies that find themselves at the intersection of missed public expectation and their strategies. They want to do something, but the expectations of the public, typically represented by the media, gets in the way of what they're doing. We also do some work for some high net worth individuals that find themselves in that same sort of intersection of the public expects something or the public expects nothing, and all of a sudden they're thrust into the spotlight. But we also do a lot of work with startups, sort of smaller companies where one sort of slip up could kind of create crib death for them. A lot in the tech space that are having a lot about privacy and personal information and things like that. So it's exclusively crisis communications. The long tail of that is working with organizations on reputation management. How do you grow your reputation, grow your license to operate over the long term?
Wow. This is going to be a rabbit trail, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But cool. I happen to notice that you did like some critical work in Bulgaria. Is that what I saw?
I did some great work in Bulgaria. So I started my career running political campaigns. So I ran campaigns. My first paid gig was a senior in high school. So I ran campaigns, from high school to college and then post-college for a number of years. And anybody that that's been in around politics at the end of November is that they say, well, hell, I'm never going to do that again. Either win or lose, never going to do that again. And so at that time, my girlfriend, who ultimately became my fiance, first wife, and the mother of my kids, she was doing a project in Eastern Europe. And I said, sure, I just finished a campaign. And so we went to Bulgaria for 5 years. And at the very end, wound up doing a lot of different things, but at the very end, working for the prime minister and setting up kind of a similar to a White House communication structure, sort of with a very strategic director of communications and then a more tactical spokesperson, press secretary. And that was kind of a new model that they had not really operationalized.
Wow.
Great experience. Stuff. It was great stuff. Stuff.
That's amazing. And I'll stop all my questions going down that trail because, as much as
I love Eastern Europe. I'm happy to talk about it. I think Eastern Europe is awesome. And it's a little bit in the news nowadays.
Yeah, but we have this whole thing with the media nowadays, and you talk about the crisis communication. How much of a piece of that is the media not getting the story right intentionally or unintentionally and running with it, and how you respond or react to that?
Yeah, I'm not a huge pessimist on the media. I actually, maybe it's my naive nature, but I've been doing this for a pretty long time and I've been burnt and I've been right in both ways. I think most reporters want to get it right when they tell a story. I think our view of right as a company or an individual that finds themselves in those crosshairs of that intersection is different than what the reporter views as right. So I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that they're out to screw you. I think there are reporters that have agendas and want to create a fact pattern that matches their preconceived notion. So yes, I absolutely think those exist, but I think they're the minority. I think generally speaking in corporate context and corporate crises is that people are just trying to shine a light on a topic, tell the truth about a topic. And it's incumbent upon us to share our version and interpretation of that. And, that kind of gets called spin, but I don't really think it's spin. I think it's just, we are trying to inform someone about our perspective and how we're going to get past this situation. And I've generally, like I said, I'm an optimist by nature. And I think that most reporters want to try to get it right.
It's interesting. That's really consistent. We teach a course on workplace drama, basically conflict management.
Yeah.
And I forget who it is that said that, but somebody else made a similar comment the best way to approach things is to assume that people's intentions are good and go from there, because otherwise you're going to bring some baggage into the conversation. So
super healthy way to live,
yeah.
Whether it's in a workplace environment, a crisis environment, your partner, your kids, the guy that cut you off in traffic at a stoplight. That's not a bad way to live.
Yeah, no, that's smart. So we're talking, you're talking crisis communication, reputation management. What are the, a lot of what we teach has to do with being more systematic in how you behave as a leader, whether it's in the management disciplines or in other areas. Reputation management, if you talk about that, what are the systems you need to have in place? What do you need to do so you're managing your reputation? Or is it managing the reputation more, or is it protecting?
Yeah, fabulous question. So it's both. It's yes and in that context. So let me share a story. So and it was sort of the birth of this. In the book I wrote about called Critical Moments, it was talked about this 4 A's of reputation management. So it's exactly what you're talking about, that process that I shared in the book. And so I was sitting with a female CEO. It was in New York, and we had just gone through a crisis event for her organization. Not existential and not huge, but it certainly kept them in the newspaper more than they wanted to be, and some pretty significant headlines. So they made changes and were moving past it. So we were debriefing post-crisis event in her office after it, and her 2 things have always stuck with me. The first one is just funny. She said, "Well, that sucked. Let's never do that again." That was quote number 1. And then quote number 2 was, you keep talking about reputation management. What do you mean by that? And it really forced me to come up with an articulation, because I fumbled and I did not do a really good articulation in that conversation with her. In her mind's eye, the process she had was the 4 P's of marketing. And I think a lot of people are familiar with the 4 P's of marketing. It's price, product, place, promotion, basic 4 P's. Innovated in the 1960s. It's now the genesis of most marketing, the modern marketing mix that's there. And she kept saying, what I need is a process, or I need a system. So David, exactly what you're saying. I need a process or a system like the 4 P's that brought rationalization to marketing. Because prior to the marketing mix, marketing was sales. You had people going door to door, knocking on doors, but then you created advertising and promotion and things like that. And so what that challenged me to do is come up with the model. And so the answer to your question is, I think there are 4 A's, words that begin with the letter A, 4 A's that set companies on this journey towards reputation management, and happy to unpack and talk about the 4 A's. But I think absolutely, and that's never really existed in reputation management. It's kind of been vaporware put together by consultants and PR flacks. But I really think that reputation, just like any other discipline within an organization, HR, legal, janitorial, whatever, there is a system. And I know you subscribe to that, and we need to find that same system for reputation management. And I think that's what we're sharing right now.
So this is the basis of your book, these 4 A's?
Yeah, that's on the 4 A's. The pyramid's on the cover. So that's the 4 A's is the new mindset of reputation management.
Okay, and it sounds like that's something we got to recommend to our audience. But why don't you talk about that to a little bit as an introduction for the audience?
Sure.
Because I'm all into this, as you said, systems and having 4 cornerstones and the whole deal.
Yeah, so I chose a pyramid and a triangle, and so we can pick any chart, graph, color, or shape we want to. But there's basically 4 premises to this journey. Well, excuse me, there's 5 premises to the journey of reputation management. So the first thing begins with this very large foundation that begins with awareness. Corporations, large or small, corporations need a sense of self-awareness of, what can we actually do? What is our market? Who do we serve? What are the expectations that we think the market expects from us? What do we think they expect from us? So there's this notion of awareness. How do we understand it? What are the issues that impact us? What are the risks that impact us? Just this really a lot of desk research, frankly, asking ourselves, where do we stand, and can we really deliver when we say something, can we really deliver it? So that's the foundational.
I really like the fact that as part of that, you put in the risks.
Absolutely.
So many people, when they're doing that piece of it, they're all blue skying. You know, they're all fantasizing of all the dream. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. And they don't look at the risk side.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you think about it, I've done this little thought exercise and asked people to just list 10 corporations, just tick, 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 just list 10 corporations that you can think of. And either it's one of a handful of things. It's either the things you shop at. You went to Starbucks this morning and picked up a coffee. And so Starbucks popped in your mind, or you jumped in your Toyota. So Toyota popped in your mind. More than 50% of people, when I ask that, it is because of some sort of crisis event. That's why they're on the list. Okay, they're on the list because, I heard about Walmart that did this, or I heard about BP that did that, or I heard about GE's stock price really tanking. It is some negative event that puts him on the list. If you just ask that cold, and that's not empirical research, but people remember the negative far more than they remember the positive. And so that's why you're exactly right. That's why this stuff has to begin with risks, because that's what unfortunately people are going to remember you for, not your greatest successes. So I'll just keep plowing. So that's sort of this notion of awareness, self-awareness, organizational awareness, then moves to this assessment. That's asking questions. That is asking questions to your employees, asking questions to your stakeholders, asking questions to your customers, and simply asking them, what do you expect of us? What do you want us to do? I have a hunch based on my own self-awareness, but we do assessment where we actually ask, public opinion, stakeholder research, employee engagement, whatever, ask questions. What do you expect from us? What do you want us to do? What are the mission and values that we hold dear that actually pull through, that are actually true? And so there's this whole layer before you go anywhere in reputation awareness or reputation management, is you need to have this sense of assessment, of asking questions.
I think that's totally great. It's kind of like a reality check. I always remember the old movie that Robert Redford did, Brubaker, where he went into the prison that he was going to take over as the warden, as a prisoner first, to experience it as the prisoner, to give him a reality check that no one could question.
Absolutely. And I think we need that, is because, I call out on a company called Illinois Tool Company, or it's Illinois Tool, publicly traded company, amazing stock run, just a fabulous, fabulous company. I seriously doubt you've ever heard of them, but they are a wonderful, high reputation firm. I do not expect them to solve climate change. I do not expect them to solve LGBTQ issues. I do not expect them to lean in on the Boy Scouts. I don't expect anything. I expect them to treat their employees well, make really, really innovative products that meets people's needs. But if a new CEO came in there with a Starbucks, Walmart, Google mindset, would totally screw up the business. It's totally screw up. So they did some research that said, what do you expect from us? And no one said, we want you to solve LGBTQ issues. That is not what we want Illinois Tool to solve for us. Google, Starbucks, you name it, maybe, but that's what these guys, but that's what they did. And that's the discipline of that assessment.
Yeah,
to
cool.
Look and ask is what's critical.
That sounds great. So
those are the first two:
next?
Awareness, assessment, and then you sort of move to this construct of authority. And so the question of authority is basically permission from your senior leadership, manifested by budget or manifested by buy-in, in order to go take action. And it's a pretty typical management structure that you get executive buy-in really early in the process, and you bring executives along. And I'm not opposed to that. I think that's really good. But until an organization is aware of who they are, assessed what the public and their stakeholders need, you're asking an unfair question to your leadership to give you the authority. So to come to your leadership and asking their permission for with specific insights is the best way, in my experience, to get senior leaders to buy into reputation management programs that are soft and, as we said earlier, kind of inherently misunderstood. So my authority, which is buy-in from the senior leadership, is a lagging indicator as opposed to an early indicator. And I'm just curious your reaction to that as people are trying to go on change journeys and are trying to transform their organizations. Do you get buy-in once you know a little bit, or do you get buy-in at the beginning? So I'd love your perspective on where getting leadership authority should come in a journey of transformation.
Well, before I respond, can you give me an example to kind of clarify that for the audience? Because I want to make certain I'm zeroing in on exactly the point you're making.
Sure. And so It would be typical for a head of communications or a chief marketing officer at an organization to go to their executive leadership team or their board that says, we're going to go on a journey of reputation management. We want to improve our reputation to make us more resilient if a crisis were to happen and to increase our license to operate. Most boards and senior leaders are going to say, sure, that's great. That's a good thing. What does that mean? Or what does that really mean practically? Unless you've done self-awareness, unless you've done that assessment, it is unfair what you're asking for in that authority process. So it would be natural to say, we're going to go do a new thing, get buy-in, and then go through the journey. I'm advocating that go do your work, do your homework, get a level of understanding, then get buy-in from your leadership, because the way I see most reputation management programs fail is when senior leaders and boards of directors just give it lip service. And they say, oh, yeah, we're going to be the greenest company ever. Or, oh, yeah, we're really going to improve minority recruitment. But it never manifests. It's like writing a check to the United Way. It's effortless. Nobody thinks twice about writing a check to the United Way. But unless you've done those building blocks, that authority question, can we deliver on what we say? It falls flat. So that's what I hope that's galvanizing of what I mean by authority to go on a reputation journey.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, because otherwise the green light for reputation management, is really kind of fuzzy. Mm-hmm. I think it's very interesting that if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying basically you have to define, who we are first. Yep. Through these first two steps. Yep. Really nail that down before you're going to say, here's what we need to protect.
Absolutely.
And then you're basically asking for enough authority to fulfill your responsibilities, because you've defined the responsibilities of what this reputation management piece is going to be. And if you don't do that first, you're probably going to be unsuccessful, I would think, because
absolutely
you don't have a clear map of, we talk about going from point A to point B. Is any task or is any goal, or we like to call them targets. You don't really have that point B defined, because you haven't defined who you are. So you really can't define what you're going to protect.
Absolutely.
So, okay, that makes
and
perfect
why,
sense.
And the why, why are we doing that? I mean, so we see it all the time in major corporations. We see it all the time on just sort of cause celeb. Whatever the issue of the day is that LGBTQ, wherever you are on that issue is really irrelevant. It's a topic. People are talking about, homosexual rights. People are talking about climate change. Again, doesn't matter where you are in that particular issue. It's a topic that's there. I see too many organizations, because they see this issue train running in front of them, they jump on board. And Illinois Tool and Die saw that issue train of LGBTQ. Now, they've got policies and procedures for their employees, but they didn't jump on it. They didn't need to jump on it. Coke, Starbucks, McDonald's, other brands, maybe B2C, bigger brands might need to do that and get away with it. But that's where authority really comes in. And it goes back to what you're saying about, my words are, why? Why are we going from A to B? What's the point of going from A to B? So that's what authority is really all about.
Love it. Love it. Okay, we're 3 out of the 5. Where do we go from here?
So above the authority line is a solid blue line on the model that I share. It's a solid blue line on the model, and that is the consultant and well-intentioned idea filter, or membrane or barrier, hopefully, is that in my agency career, I was at a big public relations firm. We far too often were incentivized to immediately jump to the 4th A, which is action, the last A. We were far more incentivized to come to action and say, you need to have a position on climate change. You need to have a position on this. You need to do that. And it quickly, what I realized is that is destined for failure. And as I was a purveyor of that, I got incentivized to purvey action, action, action. So I've got this solid blue line, which is the consultant and agency buffer for organizations to say, are we really sure we're ready? Are we really sure this is the right step? Then you move to the final A, which is action. And that's when you develop true reputation management programs, policies, procedures, what I call leadership marketing, and that you really get out in front and you start talking about these issues in a very real and authentic way, because you've gone from the bottom up, and that's when organizations really, really hit their stride, and that's when they get it right. So it's a little tongue in cheek, the blue line that's there, but it is absolutely to stop guys like me from coming in with the idea of the day, but actually that's really consistent to the organization.
So walk me through that, because I think I lost something. So you got
Yep.
4 A's, but you added one at the beginning that was more of a commentary type of thing. So start me there and then walk me through, and,
Yeah.
and
So
stop
four
me at the
A's.
third A when you
Got
get
it. So
there.
four A's, sort of the first one being awareness, self-awareness,
Right.
and an awareness of who I am. Second A is assessment. Ask others about what we're doing and how we're doing it. Authority, get the buy-in and the belief from your organization and that's necessary, whether that's budget. Solid blue line, stop. Don't just jump to action. Stop right there. Then once you've made sure that you've understood everything below, the first three, then the final A is action. Then you can really create and do a myriad of innovative plans, or it could be one thing or it can be a lot of things that's there. And then each one of them are now measurable, because you've asked people, what do you expect of us? You then go do it, and you can go back and ask people, how did we do? All of that creates resiliency in a crisis context.
So I really like the process, and I really think everybody needs to get the book, and including me. So, but the one question I have for you, as you move to the action phase, you've got this solid blue line.
Yep.
That seems like kind of a different reality check, in that, first of all, do we fully understand where we are, and then this authority piece. But is it also a solid blue line, because then all those actions that are going to be thrown at you by whomever, internally or external experts, people, because you've got that solid blue line, is that for you to also be very careful on what you buy into as far as the actions you take?
Because you're self-aware and you've assessed, because you have that understanding and you're better filter. So the perfect example is an incredibly talented communicator will go to an annual conference of the Public Relations Society of America. Great organization. And they'll go hear a keynote speaker talk about a Chicago-based hospital that came up with this amazing innovation around employee recruitment in underserved communities. Beautiful program, really worked well. Everybody says, that's awesome. We need to do that in South Texas, or we need to do that in someplace else, and it just doesn't work. And so you can take good ideas, but if you don't know yourself, you can't make them fit into your specific needs. And so it is exactly what you said, is a barrier for good ideas to make sure they're truly authentic and real.
So I've got two major questions.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which one you want to hit first, but one's more at the foundational level. If we're talking about reputation management, building on your platform here, then what things need to be put in place? The other flip side is the crisis communication. Yep. Okay, there's been a crisis, something slipped through, somebody made a mistake, whatever. What are some of the key tips there of, how do you respond to that instead of react and put your foot into your mouth up to your kneecap?
Yep, absolutely. Let's stay on the reputation management chain, and then let's go to that, because they, in my mind and my experience, they fit together really, really well. And so, the goal, the reason why companies should go on a reputation management journey, and I've mentioned it, I glossed over it, is twofold. One is you want to maintain your license to operate. Okay, is that, let's take Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A wanted to open up stores in San Francisco, New York, and other major urban areas. That was just part of their natural growth of having more stores. Their license to operate was slowed down because the positions that they had, some social issue positions that they had taken. And Chick-fil-A, that I assume everybody knows, is generally a Southeast United States regional chicken brand, chicken sandwiches. They wanted to expand to some major markets. But the city councils and the regulators in those markets said, no, whoa, you're not doing that. You're not going to bring that hate into our community. So their license to operate was shrunk. It shrunk and was compromised. The other reason you do reputation management.
Well, wait a minute. Stay with Chick-fil-A for a moment. Just for all our audience should understand what that quote unquote hate they were accused of was. But why don't you touch on that as far as their company values and what they want to stand firm on?
The Chick-fil-A is not open on Sundays, and the Truett family is very Christian and has been relatively outspoken about LGBTQ issues, anti-LGBTQ issues in the past. Not in a mean or hateful or, for my personal judgment, bad way, but it was a way that was perhaps a little bit out of the mainstream. And so New York City and San Francisco, as they tried to expand into those markets, said, whoa, time out. We're not just going to give you a permit to open our store or whatever the regulatory hurdles they had to get over to open the store. We're just not going to let you do that without an understanding around some of these issues. And so that's just a crystal clear example of a license to operate. What's back to where we were talking about the 4As is Chick-fil-A used to be a client of ours, is that they know, it's not like a big surprise. They know that people are going to disagree with them on LGBTQ, but it's who they are. It is core. They are clear about those positions that are there. And so they understand that. So they didn't lead their reputation on that, but they understand that it impacts their reputation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my understanding, as you say, their approach was not attacking the LGBT community, but it was more like, that's not something we believe in.
Correct.
We believe in more traditional family type of thing.
Absolutely.
And we want to be supportive. We want to love everybody, but that's just not something that we're going to support to the extent that some of these more liberal metropolitan areas, want us to.
Exactly.
And so they had to make a decision. Do they hold firm to their core, or do they bend? And so it was an interesting and ongoing,
absolutely ongoing,
battle that they have to decide, are they going to stand firm on? So that's a great example.
Yeah. So it's the reasons you go on reputation management journey is twofold. One, license to operate. That's an illustration of what I mean about license to operate. And so if you and I own a lumber yard and we want to open up another store across town, we don't want anybody getting in our way. We want to get permitted, get employees. We want all those things that are necessary to open up a new lumber yard. That's license to operate, because we as business owners have decided a store on the east side is a good thing. So that's license to operate. The other thing you get from it, and Starbucks is the best example of this, is the benefit of the doubt. All right, so Starbucks recently, I think in the past 18 months or so, has been hit by two very odd race issues related to race. So they've had people coming into their stores and the cops were called because they weren't ordering coffee fast enough, and a manager kind of got ahead of their ski tips. And so they had two incidences like that. I don't love Starbucks coffee, but the brand is magical. The brand is very, very powerful. Most people, when they hear some sort of accusation that Starbucks is racist or that Starbucks managers don't like Black people, is that doesn't jive with me. They get the benefit of the doubt. That's not the Starbucks I know, or that's not the Starbucks I like, whether I like the coffee or not. But generally, because of some of the reputational work that they've done, they get the benefit of the doubt in that context. So those are the two things we're trying to achieve: is the benefit of the doubt and to maintain our license to operate, to run and grow our business the way we want to. That's why we do reputation management.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
So the other thing that I think you alluded to before we started was this aspect, and you at the beginning of the talk. Is you talked about, okay, you've got and I really liked your phrase and I can't remember it, but you've got your startup and all of a sudden you're starting to go.
Yeah.
And you're starting to take, did you call it crib death?
Crib death. You want to avoid crib death. You want to avoid crib death. Sudden death syndrome, I think it's called, or sudden infant death, or something like that.
Yeah, terrible thing in reality. But as far as a startup, so you're starting to climb, and it's never occurred to you that something's going to come out of left field and hit you on whatever one of these areas, or having one of your people misbehave, which you just kind of brought up on the Starbucks. So, and you don't have the Starbucks base of support where people will kind of overlook it. that I guess is another area on this need for the reputation management being done in advance
Yes.
of the crisis.
And we see it a lot in tech, a lot in disruptive technologies. Companies that are Facebook. Facebook's, and certainly they're clearly not a small enterprise, but the Zuckerberg mantra is move fast and break things, and that mantra has really made it down to most startups. And I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm in a really vibrant startup community, and meet with these guys, and they're like, this innovation, whether we're disrupting the insurance industry, the funeral industry, car buying, or hospitality, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to disrupt something. That there are unknown risks that can significantly impact that organization. And one article in Wired or the Wall Street Journal or wherever that said, David's cool app 2.0 does this, and it's kind of game over. I mean, you're now David's 3.0 because you just got to reboot the whole premise. And while on its face, it makes sense. So we see that a lot in technology. But you're right. The way they can get around that is less about reputation management. Nice segue to what you and I were talking about. It's more about risk management. If someone says, David App 2.0 is selling my data, or David App 2.0 is violating my kids' safety, we should think about that so that we're prepared to respond to it and not just be go startups and just roll over everybody. My concern about my kids' safety or my concern about your app, in whatever context, are legitimate concerns. And I just shouldn't get blown over. I'm not a Luddite because I don't want you to take advantage of my kids or do whatever the app may or may not do. Very few technology startups think that way because they want to move fast and break things.
Yeah, and they're blue skying.
Totally.
We're
not talking about risk, like you just said earlier.
Yeah, just racing. So now I'm curious and we don't have a lot of time left, and I know you're on a tight schedule, but I'm and I have like an hour or two left of questions for you. So I'm sorry.
We can come back together again, maybe.
But I'm curious on the crisis management side, and I'd like to kind of throw you a little bit of a curveball here.
Okay.
One of the people that seem to do amazingly well, although and are constantly in kind of a crisis management type of PR mode, is our President Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So is there anything to be learned by the way he gets shot at and still seems to stand up as we think about when you're faced with a crisis, it comes out of the blue, and how you should respond?
Yeah, great question. I'm not a fan of the incumbent president, so I will set that aside for the purposes of this answer. For the purposes of this answer, he has, as odd as it seems, he is incredibly aware of his constituency. He is aware of that base, and he knows what moves that base and what he can do to move that base and what has the potential to move his base. And so he is really, really acutely aware of that. So that's sort of aspect number one, is that I do think there is a sense of deep awareness about that zeitgeist of the red hat crowd. I think he really gets that. I think the second thing that he's done, and it's not a new tactic, Nixon tried it and some other folks have done it, he just sort of protected it, is that a little bit of just sort of come at me, bro. I mean, this is who I am. This is what I got. I didn't do it. Deny, and just stand rock-ribbed. I think we've seen some corporations try to pull that off, typically not successfully because they're held to a different account and they don't have a core constituency. Nobody's really to fall on the sword for BP, pumping millions of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody's really to do that. They would do that for the president. So I think what he's done is that he can be a lot more rock-ribbed in his responses because he has that base, but he also has the personal hubris to say, screw you, this is what I'm going to do. Very few companies can do that. So you can learn from him, but it's hard for companies to mimic him.
I think it's a really good point you make in that you can learn from him, but you're learning the wrong way to do it.
Totally.
Because as companies, even as individual leaders, we cannot stand up that way and deflect, because public company, private company,
big or small.
If we're really making a mistake or our company is really doing something wrong, the public's not going to let up.
Nope.
And it's so we can't cross that boundary. I think that comes back to your 4 A's.
It does. It does.
Really comes back to your 4 A's of where you need to be. If you've got that strong foundation, you're going to stay there, and you're not going to go in that risk area where Trump likes to play.
Absolutely. And risk is a perfect segue. So we like to talk about risk. And it was so wonderful when you mentioned that earlier is understanding risk. We talk about risks in 3 ways: strategic risks, preventable risks, and external risks. Strategic risks are things you meant to do. You meant to do them for superior enterprise value. You took this chance for a reason. Preventable risk, there should not be metal shavings and hamburger patties. It just simply should not happen. It's totally preventable. It should not happen. External risk are hurricanes and active shooters and the crazy things that happen. Force majeure that's out there, acts of God. Each one of them requires a different type of response in a crisis context. So this is back to the crisis management stuff. And so unless you understand your risk, that shapes your response. So strategic risk, we're a food company and we meant to reintroduce red dye number 5. You'll remember back to our youth that red dye number 5 was a horrible, horrible color and a horrible product that caused cancer. But we as a company, for some stupid reason, have decided we are going to do that. And we did some focus groups and some research, and it's the right thing for us to do. That's a strategic risk. The response to that, if we get called out on it, is not to apologize, but it is to defend and explain, share empathy and say, David, I'm sorry you misunderstand why we are doing this, but here's what we're doing. So that's a strategic risk. A less comical version of that is we're going to raise prices. We're going to shut down a factory. We're going to change our business model. Those are other strategic risks that smart people decided to do. It predicates that you say, I'm sorry you don't understand. Let me explain it. Preventable, metal shavings in a hamburger, bad things that happen in the manufacturing process. It is, David, I am sorry. We are doing everything we can to fix that. And we're going to get it back online as quick as we can. And here's a $10 rebate. That is what you do in preventable risks. If I did that on red dye number 5, oh my God, you're right. We should have never done that. We just look like idiots. And so companies do it all the time because nobody's ever going to find out. That's a big mistake. And then external risk is that I don't have to apologize for a hurricane, okay? Because it affected everybody else within about a 15 to 20 mile radius that's there. And so you have the benefit of external risks of being in the herd. Data breach. Data breaches happen. There are bad guys that are stealing data. You should try to do everything you can to prevent it, but there are bad people that happen. And just put yourself in the herd and just say, man, we're working on it as hard as we can. We are fixing it. We want to get it back. Here's a promise. Here's a commitment that we're going to do. So each one of those risks, I think, predicates a crisis response that is unique. And unless you think about risk that way, you're fumbling and stumbling and slow, which is the death knell in a crisis situation, being slow.
Well, I feel like we're just getting started, but I want to encourage our audience to avoid one preventable risk, in that you need to get a hold of Bill's your book. And what is the name of the book, and how can people get a hold of you? Because this is a preventable risk. We're ending on risk, which may not be the best thing, but at least we're going to talk about a preventable one. And how do they get your book, and how do they get a hold of you?
Awesome. The book is Critical Moments, the New Mindset of Reputation Management. It's at criticalmomentsbook.com, but it's also on Amazon and a number of other, for sale platforms. I think Barnes & Noble, the publishers, put it on all those platforms that are there. But for folks on these, when I do these podcasts, the publisher's been generous enough to give me a stack of them. And so if people want to hit us up on LinkedIn or at our website, where the name of the firm is Kith, Kith. So we're kith.co. And then I'm pretty active on Twitter. And so happy to respond on any one of those channels that's there.
Awesome. Well, this has been great to have you on. Thanks so much for making time. I hope our audience gets your book. I'm certainly going to get a copy. And I hope we get to work together in the future. Quite frankly, I love what you had to say.
Well, David, thank you very much. And thank you for what you do. I think your stuff about, leadership training, leadership coaching, it's awesome stuff. And more people need to pause and reflect and get better. So I think just keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like great stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. And thanks to our audience.